Today on Listen Up, cheating, extramarital sex. Run from it, recover from it, or give it a try? We'll hear it all next. Welcome to Listen Up. I'm Lorna Dueck. Adultery. It's an old-fashioned word with plenty of contemporary context. Whether it's movie stars, golf pros, politicians, or the family next door, we hear about it all the time. And yet, in spite of the frequency of unfaithfulness today, less than 1 in 5 Canadians polled thought extramarital affairs were morally acceptable. So today, we're asking why. Today in the show, we'll hear from a couple whose marriage survived adultery. We'll also meet a man who runs a $20 million business with the slogan, "Life is short, have an affair." We'll explore the Tiger Woods scandal that got us all thinking twice about the effects of cheating. And here's what you had to say about that.
15% of Canadians say it's okay to cheat. What are your thoughts on that?
I would have to disagree with that. I don't think it's okay to cheat. If you don't want to cheat, you get divorced.
So what are your thoughts of Tiger Woods now that he's been caught?
Well, I think he should probably step forward and clear the air. I think part of the problem is that he hasn't stepped forward. I mean, when that happened to Clinton, he admitted it and it didn't seem to hurt his career. So I think that's probably what he should do.
Well, our next guest calls the Tiger Woods story an old story on steroids. John Seal is a moral entrepreneur, a cultural commentator. He joins us from Salt Lake City, Utah. Welcome to Listen Up, John.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
When the Tiger Woods story broke, his popularity ratings plummeted, respect fell off the map, but then more recently, the USA Today and Gallup poll hailed him as one of the top 10 admired people of 2009. What's going on?
Well, I think people tend to admire their public achievement and are very leery of being judgmental about people's private lives. And I think we have this disconnect between what people do in public and what they do in private, and somehow think that one doesn't have any bearing on the other.
And why is that dangerous for us to disconnect our heroes like that?
It's dangerous for us because we live integrated lives, and a person who's willing to lie in private is willing to lie in public.
So the fact that we didn't catch that Tiger's infidelity was able to be suspended like that between a polling for popularity, what does that tell us about ourselves?
Well, I think the North American public is very leery of being judgmental. We're very nervous about being judgmental, particularly about sexual mores, and as a consequence, we have in that arena kind of a live and let live kind of attitude. At the same time, we're fascinated by it because we have a strong sense that this is not what ought to be.
Okay, so it's become entertainment fodder, but there is, you describe it as a casual disregard for sexual boundaries. What are we creating for ourselves as a culture when we have a muted outrage against adultery? What do you mean?
Well, I think people enter into marriage often on very shaky premises, some kind of Hollywood understanding of romance. 60% of American 20-year-olds believe that cohabitation is a good thing, and stigmas against children out of wedlock is decreasing. So we have a culture that does not celebrate marriage as a whole. In fact, if 50% of marriages end in divorce, we have now a generation of children of divorcees, many of whom have become increasingly cynical about marriage. And so as an institution, it doesn't garner much respect at all.
Okay, you loaded us down there with some very important things. Let's just take that apart a bit. You believe, as you refer to people living together, that your marriage has a better chance of surviving adultery than it does of people who lived together before they got married. Really? Where do you base that on?
Well, CDC, Center for Disease Control in Atlanta, has statistics that suggest that 85% of people who enter into marriage in a cohabiting relationship after 10 years, well, their marriage is likely to end in divorce. And if you have infidelity in marriage, the chances of your ending up in divorce are 70%. So the fact of the matter is, your assumptions about marriage as you go into it have an enormous bearing on the very nature of one's expectations in marriage.
Okay, if we were going to be able to start to turn the cultural tide, to get the moral courage to start discussing that there are boundaries to be put around healthy sexual behaviors, what would it look like? How do we do this?
Well, I think we have to begin to reframe the entire conversation about what is the nature of the good life. For most people, the good life, as is shaped by Hollywood and the other stories we tell, celebrates the excitement of infidelity or of sleeping around. It does not celebrate marriage or faithfulness or commitment or loyalty or fidelity. None of those things are actually celebrated in the imagination. So if we're going to turn the culture around, we're going to have to start telling stories that shape the imagination of the coming generations in a way that celebrate marital fidelity as being the most exciting, the most joy-filled, the most flourishing way that human relationships can be established.
All right, you're talking about tackling Hollywood and its powerful storytelling machine, aren't you? Anywhere else that we could be doing that?
Well, there's no substitute for demonstrating faithfulness within one's own marriage. There are large numbers of people that have never actually seen a marital couple that loves each other, has a greater joy and happiness after every year that they're together. We need to actually have a host of great marriages that are celebrated. I actually think that churches and other kinds of communal organizations should celebrate those people who have been intact, have intact marriages where there is a great love and a continuing joy and partnership together. Most people, many people, particularly among the coming generation, have never ever seen that kind of marriage. It's not been in their family experience. None of their friends have had that kind of experience. And so it's beyond what is imaginable.
All right. John Seal joining us from Salt Lake City, Utah. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Up next, a man who couldn't disagree with putting boundaries around marriage more. 5 million people participate in his business that helps create extramarital affairs. That story next.